Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Replacing the bridge in Laxey, the right to ask parliamentary questions, and planning all had people talking on the programme this week. And so did the debate over the island's tax rates. Here's Stu Peters.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Should a rethink in the tax rates in the island be considered? A leading island economist says a major newspaper article casting gloom on Jersey's financial prospects underlines key differences between the Manx and Jersey economies. The three-page report in The Guardian this week is entitled On the Rocks, the Fall of Jersey. John Webster of Manx Business Connections says there are similarities but also key differences between the two jurisdictions. Meanwhile, the Chief Minister here has dismissed the three-page Guardian newspaper article as presenting little new. It presented a gloomy picture for Jersey residents, quoting a £145 million black hole in income needing to be filled to satisfy services. Alan Bell has also dismissed an idea that if Jersey, Guernsey and the Isle of Man jointly agreed on a rise in income tax, it would provide the jurisdictions with a financial way out of their difficulties. Reassuring, I think, that the Chief Minister doesn't want to give the rest of the government a get-out-of-jail card in terms of downsizing and making itself more efficient. But could raising taxes help to solve the island's financial woes in the short term, or would increasing tax rates damage the island's future prosperity and hurt the very people working and paying taxes? I still prefer to pay indirect taxation, as to some degree you can avoid paying it by not using or buying whatever the service or object is taxed. If income tax or national insurance goes up, only people who can afford an accountant can avoid paying some of it. People in the middle will be hammered again, says Alan. Yes, I can see the point of that, actually. Indirect taxation, like you say, you can decide not to buy something or use a certain service if you object to it, whereas income tax is a bit of a blunt instrument. Let's go to the lines. We've got Eddie on. Hello, Eddie.
I just listened to what you were saying about Alan Bell looking at taxation. I would suggest, although I may not be an expert, I think Mr. Bell would be better off looking at other methods of, i.e. over-budget projects, consultation fees and everything else. But no, he prefers to penalise unemployed, people with ill health, low-paid workers and pensioners. All you've got to do is look at everything that he has said. These are the people who are being penalised, the people who can at least afford it.
OK.
Funny way around the country.
All right, so you think it's the high earners, the millionaires, that ought to be hit by...
No, I didn't say that. Don't put words in my mouth. I said it'd be better looking at other areas of raising money, i.e. overspending on budgets, consultation fees and everything else that the government makes mistakes in, rather than penalising pensioners, unemployed, people suffering from ill health and everything else. OK, so which of the consultations do you think have been a waste of money? Come on, do you want to list that? The list is that long.
Good, all right. So he's looking in the wrong areas, according to Eddie. I don't know if you agree or disagree with Eddie, but get in touch and tell us. What else? I can't see any reason why the tax rates can't go up by 1% to 11% and 21%, or 21% for all, from the 6th of May 2016. I don't think anybody would complain. I think they would. And if we lose a couple of millionaires, so be it. We all have to contribute to get ourselves back on an even keel. Or is this government just for the better off and rich, including themselves in that? And that from Phil. OK, I'm a middle earner on about 25 grand a year. Obviously, I don't like the idea of paying more tax. But when I see those on lower incomes being hit by blunt charges, such as the sewerage charge, and increasingly being hit by things like parking charges in town, I can't help but think that income tax increases might be the best move. Income tax is a very fair tax in terms of distributing the pain fairly. Interesting thought, that, and well put together. Thank you for that, whoever it was that sent it. Hey boy, that's rich. Get out of jail card, isn't it? Alan Bell will be able to skip off into the sunset next year, awash with cash along with a pension that he's only been paying towards for a year or so. All in this together? I think not. Facts, says Frank. Good. Opening salvo for the week, Frank. The days of relying on being a tax haven are over. We're no longer competitive within the tax avoidance system, so now is the time to raise income tax here. It's the only way to go to be fair to all. OK. The most a millionaire can pay in tax here is 100 grand. It's the same for companies. An extra 1% won't hurt these guys. I thought it was 130 grand now for the tax cappers. I might be wrong. Extra 1% won't hurt those guys. No, it won't, I don't suppose. But it would hurt people who are just about sort of getting by, paying the way on, more sort of working class wages, and I can count myself amongst the working classes. Stu, can I just say, why even think about increasing the tax rate when all it's for is to pay pensions for MHKs, highly paid civil servants, not all civil servants, I hasten to add, fire service and police. I can't wait to hear what he has to say in his announcement on this matter in February. I just don't understand how these outrageous pensions were ever sanctioned. I know you go on about years ago we were flooded with money, but even so, it should never have been allowed to line their pockets when the taxpayer's pension is barely enough to survive on. That from Jill. Yeah, I agree with you, Jill, I think. This text in, I feel that there needs to be a staged tax increase with those with higher incomes having higher rates of tax. OK, if Phil wants to pay more taxes, let him. I, for one, am paying enough already, and I don't want to pay any more, says Dave. Yeah, well, I'm kind of like you on that, Dave. I don't really want to pay any more tax. I mean, if it came in, then I suppose you'd have to do it and do your best to smile about it. But I don't want to pay any more taxes because the way I look at it, everything else in the Isle of Man is so expensive that we need lower taxes to kind of balance that a wee bit. So I think if our tax rates went up, it could be a very expensive place to live. If Disney was struggling, they wouldn't get rid of Mickey Mouse. The government needs to be more efficient, as your caller suggested. Searching down the back of the sofa for loose change is not a positive message. We need to big up our economy rather than this ongoing doom and gloom message. OK. Stu, if increasing tax discourages business, would reducing tax encourage business? Asks David H. I'm no economist, so I don't know the answer to that. Just a quick point in response to the abolition of the 10% rate. I don't think it's actually happened, has it? I'm not sure, to be honest. Worth bearing in mind, though, that the proposal hits most people about £150 a year, but gave those working on minimum wage about £500 back. Seems a fair change to me. Plenty of people left behind over the years as the island has prospered. We need to protect those people going forward. Good point, thank you. Do you honestly think a millionaire would stay here if he was getting stung by the taxman? Wake up and smell the roses. They would be in Monaco or some other sunny low-tax country. Some money off them is better than none. I don't think that they'll be queuing up for your NHS doctor or dentist appointment either, says Cliffy. No, those are exactly the points I think that government makes about this. So I can see that argument. It just pains me. Let's go to the lines. We've got Sylvia on. Hi, Sylvia.
I wonder they don't put some more concentration or investigation into tax relief.
Oh, right.
The banks, for instance, that I do know, buy block boofer for their staff, a block of boofer for their staff,
Yeah.
But they get tax relief on that, so they're not paying tax on that amount of money.
Right.
And there's all sorts of things that you get tax relief on. And I don't see why you should.
I suppose that some of them are things that are considered to be business expenses. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, as a self-employed person, I can claim certain things as business expenses. Not terribly many, I have to say, but,
No, I'm not talking about so much individuals. I'm
Right.
talking about finance
Yes.
institutes. And there's all sorts of things that they can claim on. But going back to personal, if you've got a life insurance, you can get tax relief on the amount that you pay per year.
Right.
Well, why should you?
Well,
It's
I
your
know.
choice.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I know that as far as pensions are concerned, the idea is that you pay the tax when you take the money out. Whether or not that happens with life insurance, I don't know.
I don't think it
Are
does.
the proceeds
I
of a
don't know
life
for
policy?
sure.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But I do think they want to look at that, what they're giving tax relief on.
Oh, I expect that the Treasury are looking fairly carefully at all things
I
like
wonder,
that.
well, they've not mentioned. Yes, we'll leave that one.
All right, that's
Just throwing it in the pot.
all right. Thank you very much indeed. Always nice to talk to Sylvia. Start from the top and cut wages. How can you justify an MHK on ridiculous wages? Well, that's another argument entirely, isn't it? I think the basic MHK's wage is about 35 grand a year, and I think they probably earn every penny of it. Now, whether or not once they join a department and they get an extra 15 grand or so, and it puts it up to 50 grand plus, whether that's too much money, I don't know. The worst off, the working people would suffer most because the people with the money know how to lose or invest it to pay less tax, so it won't affect them, only the poor. Right, OK. Well, I think somebody suggested earlier on that if you can afford an accountant to try and find ways to minimise your tax liability, then it's not going to affect you terribly. But I don't know if there's that much truth in that.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should planning policy be centralised? The function could be put into the hands of the Cabinet Office if Tynwald members approve the move this week. In June this year, Planning and Building Control moved from the Department of Infrastructure to the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture. In the interim, planning policy was left with the DOI, but now it's proposed to move it to a more central location within the structure of government. As we've heard, in order for planning policy to be moved to the Cabinet Office, the legal status of that office has to be secured by establishing it as a government department in its own right. That would take the number of departments up to 8. So, is this an important move to modernise the way in which government works, or is it a backward step? Is centralising planning policy a good idea to create a broader approach, or should it stay under the control of an individual department away from the centre? I don't quite understand Albert's point. He says, Stu, regarding the interview with John Shimmin, MHK, he's certainly sounding very important these days. Well, he's very important. He runs a cabinet office. I don't quite know what you're saying there. From the government pink book, both staff and wages have gone up since last year. Is that a smaller government, Mr. Shimmin? Good question. And Albert's clarified. He says, Stu, sorry, I meant, with the greatest respect, self-important, says Albert. I didn't get that at all. I mean, John Shimmin can get a little bit exasperated at times, but he can get a bit worked up at times. But I thought that interview was fine. I thought he laid out the case very clearly and calmly. And, you know, at the end of the day, he's the Cabinet Office Minister. He's the Minister for Policy and whatever it is. So it's an important job. If I was a benevolent dictator for life, I'd only talk to you on Tuesdays. Stu, I think that they've been watching the box set of Yes Minister. This island is over-governed. Just keep it simple, says Bill. A lot of truth in that, I think. Hey, boy, you can move planning where you like and give it as many new hats as you like, but until there's a fair and even across-the-board planning department with the rules the same for all, it's going to stay a two-tier system. The rich and favoured developers get whatever they want and not the rest. Opinions, facts, says Frank. OK, well, I've often said that whether that's true or not, if that is the perception, then something needs to be done about it. If that's how people feel, that it's a two-tier system, that certain people get whatever they want as far as planning is concerned and others don't, then, the government needs to address that and make sure that it is fair across the board. My view is that, Frank often talks about certain developers who always seem to get planning permission. My point of view on that, and I've got no allegiance to the developers, is that they're just very good at what they do and they know how to get planning approval, where most of us would put an application in and if it was knocked back, we'd just forget about the whole thing, go away with our tails between our legs. These professional developers don't do that. They look at why it was refused and they seek to address those issues, and they come back again and again until they get what they want. They're just doing the job. I don't know that it's necessarily a two-tier system. But, let's face it, at the end of the day, money talks whatever you say, doesn't it? So the whole of life is a two-tier system, those with and those without, and those with tend to get their own way. No wonder there are so many bald people walking about after pulling their hair out at this administration. Is that what I can blame it on? They seem to do nothing but constantly window dress. I wish they'd get on with and get some real decisions made. That's what they're elected for, says Alan. Yes, I see what you're saying about that, that it's all a case of sort of rearranging the deck chairs at times, but according to the Minister, it's very important that this is done properly and it's done right and it's done now. So whether you agree or not on that, great, more government officials and even more brown envelopes under tables. Oh, that's lazy. If you've got any proof of brown envelopes under tables, then let's have it and let's get the cops involved, rather than just suggesting all the time that that's what happens. And the Minister said very clearly in the interview that it doesn't mean more government officials. It didn't mean any more money. It was just a case of rearranging things. Wow, it lives. First squeak we've heard from John Shimmin since he was re-inducted into the club. Haven't seen much policy or reform from him yet, says Paul. Okie dokie, if you've got a point of view about this, be nice, it's Christmas. It's very easy to make vague accusations of incompetence by government without specifics. Totally agree with you that some of the contributions being made are lazy. Perhaps the naysayers should say what they would do different rather than making ill-informed assertions. Well, I sometimes feel like that, I have to admit. That there are a lot of lazy sort of stereotypes that all politicians are on the make, and I'm not suggesting that there haven't over the years been occasions when things haven't gone as they should have done, but I think it is lazy to assume that everybody's passing brown envelopes around and stuff, and we've never seen any proof of it. Far from it being for government to correct a two-tier planning system, they've actually created the two-tier system by allowing the wealthy to demolish houses and buildings as long as they build a mansion, whereas the rest of us have to jump through hoops to comply with restrictive rules. Okay, well, let's just look at that. And I don't know much about planning. I mean, I fell foul of it a couple of years ago. I had to jump through the hoops that you're talking about. So, and at the time I found it particularly onerous and silly, to be honest. So I can certainly see that point of view. But, if somebody's going to build a mansion house out in the country that nobody can really see, does it matter much compared to somebody who lives in a row of terraced houses? He wants to put UPVC windows in, whereas the rest of them are all traditional wooden windows. So you can understand that the planning office might come down on that, whereas the mansion out in the country that's not going to affect anybody is of less import to them. I don't know. I'm just suggesting that as maybe that's the thought process that goes into this sort of thing. I don't know. But if people think that we've got a two-tier system and that the rich get away with murder and the rest of us don't, then it needs to be addressed, doesn't it? A couple of texts from regulars suggesting all sorts of improprieties that have gone on over the years, and basically I've had a look at them and decided I'm not going to read them out because it's a world of legal hurt if I do, and nobody's gone to jail for any of them, so whether or not they're illegal, unlawful, or just morally dubious, I don't know, but I'm not going to go there. I'm sure you can understand why. Here's a radical idea. Why don't we just have a minister to make all planning decisions, bypass all the time wasting like we already have? It would save time and money, says John. Tongue-in-cheek. Mark, who often sends me very interesting posts, he says, have you read the article on the single legal entity notion being plotted by the civil service? It's on the PAG website and it's very enlightening. I've not seen that, but I'll have a look at it.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Do you welcome the latest moves towards implementing disability discrimination legislation? Tim will be asked today to give the final go-ahead to new laws protecting the rights of disabled people in the Isle of Man. If approved, the Disability Discrimination Act will be implemented over a 4-year period starting on the 1st of January. That's just over a couple of weeks away. The Act enshrines the rights of disabled people to access goods, services and facilities. We should point out that discrimination on grounds of disability in the field of employment is not covered by existing legislation, nor is it a matter for the DDA. It's one of the issues addressed in the Equality Bill due for the first reading early in the new year. Is this legislation long overdue? Will it make a real difference, or will it be onerous for many businesses? Sammy says, do we need a disability equality bill? Darn right we do. OK, thank you. There's very few hotels, says Brian, especially pubs in the island that people in a wheelchair can get into. Really? I didn't think that was a problem. I expect because the government are bringing this in, the planning rules will be changed. Who will be responsible for those ramps placed outside shops on public footpaths? These will be tripping hazards, don't get me wrong. I'm all for equality, says Rob. OK. Robin Peel called. I think it needs to be fully installed. There are still places where the pavements don't have ramps, etc. People in Peel tend to give people with slow movement or a disability more time to get around, but not so much in Douglas. They tend to be less patient. I hope people can give more time to people this Christmas rather than getting upset by them. Good point. Thank you, Rob. Afternoon, Stu. This all comes across as lip service from government. They're publicly saying that they care about the disabled, but at the same time, they're sending people for disability assessments and colluding with a company that openly discriminates and lies. Dependability limited about vulnerable people to get them off benefits. This is not rubbish. I have as much proof as you want and will show it to anyone that wants to listen. OK, fair dues. Robert called. We've got a lot of Robs on today. I'm absolutely in favour of these disability laws coming in. I'm right for it, putting ramps in for people. But I suffer from poor eyesight and I find that I can't see things properly. So when it comes to ramps, unless I walk around staring at the ground all the time, they can make me stumble. What would be useful is if there were signs at eye level to warn you about things like ramps outside shops. Wouldn't cost much to put a sticker in a window, would it? No, it wouldn't, but how big does it have to be, I suppose, for you to see it in time? Stu, too many people these days are in a hurry, perhaps because they've got work to do, says David H. How long is it now? 12 months that you've been on that one? Final comment on the Disability Discrimination Act. Island-wide, many disabled toilets do not have any coat hooks, making life more difficult than need be, particularly if the floor is wet. Cheap to sort out. Hope that the Act makes it law. Good. OK, well, that's a fairly practical and a fairly easy fix, I would have thought.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
What should be done to replace the bridge in Old Laxey washed away by this month's floods? A temporary footbridge is set to be completed today. Widespread flooding across the island caused the Old Road Bridge to buckle and collapse on Thursday, December the 3rd, and a double-decker bus to topple into the river. Until yesterday, the Chief Minister assured members a new vehicle bridge would be completed in time for TT 2016. What do you think should be done to replace the bridge in Laxey? Do you welcome the news that it could be replaced by TT, or should it be left as a crossing for pedestrians only? Is it a bridge too far? Cliffy says, I hope the DOI make the bridge big enough to fit a roundabout in the shape of Laxey Wheel. Are you taking this seriously, Cliffy? Stu, let's hope they don't use local DOI or the company who did Market Square in Ramsey. It'll be finished for TT 2020, says Graham. Yeah, I fear the Laxey Bridge is becoming another promenade fiasco. It's a bridge and a road. For God's sake, just get on with it, says somebody else. Incorporate the horse trams into the Laxey plan. If the rivers were cleared like they used to be, the bridge would still be where it used to be before gangs on the river, says Brian. I think that's saying that they're not clearing the rivers enough. And this from Norman, which intrigues me. Stu, there are advertisements for single-span Bailey bridges from the UK. A 50-foot single-span, 20-foot wide bridge costs £22,000 plus VAT. 22 grand, that seems incredibly cheap. You sure it's not 220 grand, Norman? A 70-foot single span costs £34,000 plus VAT. These bridges will take a 65-ton vehicle. A 75-foot bridge costs 35,000 quid plus VAT. Those bridges are very easy and quickly erected and last for years. That'd save our government thousands, hundreds of thousands, based on what Phil Gorn was just saying. Would that do the job? Would it be acceptable as a solution, a Bailey Bridge down there? What is this ex-MOD surplus from the British Army on the Rhine, maybe? I don't know. Let's go to the lines and see what John Dog makes of this. John?
That's a good idea, you man come up with there.
Isn't it? I mean, I that seems incredibly cheap to me. A 75-foot bridge that'll take 65 tons for 35 grand, that seems incredibly cheap.
I agree.
But if he's right...
it does the job. What I said... As soon as it had happened, I said that I and a few mates could put a bridge across there in a fortnight. well, if you think about it logically, obviously you got the road either side.
Yeah.
All you got to do is dig down in the road, get a decent, till you get somewhere decent, put a big concrete pad in it, and then just put RSJs across.
Yeah, yeah.
And then concrete on top of the... Now, it would have to be looked at and all sorts, but within reason, a concrete pad, RSJs across, box it, and concrete with reinforcing bars inside.
Oh, yeah, lots of rebars.
Rebars. You could, tarmac it after it's been done if you wanted, and just build a brick wall on either side. Yes. So from ostensibly, it looks like it's just a flat bridge that there's no arches underneath it, but that could all be done after. You could, glamorise it afterwards with a little bit of a little bit of an archway on either side built up so it looks like it's an arch bridge. All I'm saying is, it could probably be done in a fortnight, a month at the most.
It doesn't need to be a Rolls-Royce scheme, is what you're saying, really.
It doesn't. They're going to ask people for their opinions. Yeah. Now, they built the tram line from Laxey to the top of Snaefell in under a year.
Right.
If they were going to do it today, they'd be 20 years deciding what they were going to do and another 10 years doing it. And that's the same thing. They're going to get all these plans in, then it's going to go through all planning, and there'll be people saying, no, it should be this, no, it should have two arches, and just put a flat bridge in. The people round about there want something to get their cars across.
Yeah, they're not bothered what it looks like particularly.
They're driving over it all day and every day. They're not stopping to look, see whether there's any salmon in the river or whatever. I'm just saying, the way things are, the businesses down there are going to suffer terrible.
Yeah. Well, you'd have thought, John, I don't know anything about bridges or civil engineering, but you'd have thought that the stones that fell down are all still in the immediate vicinity of where they fell down. So it's not like they've got to cart stuff in from all over the place. It's almost like Lego that's been taken apart. The bits are still there.
Probably it's probably rubble, but what I'm saying is, if you've got a flat concrete bridge,
yeah.
I'm sure there's things you could do, and you could put a stone wall on either side with a pavement. You could make it wider, which would be useful, and then just build a stone wall with a capping on top on either side to mix in with what's about. And I'm not knocking anybody for making any decisions or not making any decisions. All I'm trying to say is there seems to be a need to get it done quickly, and in my mind, I can't see why it can't be done quickly.
Well, from what Norman said, I mean, if he's right and you can get a Bailey Bridge for 35 grand, you could throw that down over a weekend, couldn't you? And like you say, you could always prettify it up later if you wanted to.
There's all sorts you could do to that, probably.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much then, John. Nice for you. Nice to talk to you as usual. Get the old bus, put a door in the front and one in the back and drop it across the bank, says Rob. Not helpful. Yes, spot on, John Dog. Can't always be stone-faced later. It can always be stone-faced later on, says Paul. Good. Stu, we have a Royal Engineer unit on the Isle of Man. They could build it in days. I'm sure they would relish the opportunity, says Rod. There's a thought as well, yeah, why not? Use volunteer labour, save you even more money. Happy days, that's it, bridge solved. Mark's being frivolous as well. He says, how about a new Laxey bridge like the one from the old James Bond film with Roger Moore, so that people could spin 360 degrees as they go over the gap in the middle of it? Think of the tourist attraction it would become, says Mark. Yes, talk about blocking the river up though. Stu, how long would it take Manx politicians to change a light bulb, asks David H. Well, one fella up the ladder, one fella holding the ladder, a team of probably 10 expensive consultants, and the entire House of Keys complaining that they did it the wrong way. Probably, I don't know. What's Howard got to say about this? Perhaps we should dig out some of the sections of the Queen's Pier which are in cold storage and lay them across the river. Victorian built, so it won't collapse in a hurry and would look suitably old. People could enjoy a walk across at least a bit of the Queen's Pier. Could always be removed and reinstated in Ramsey should they ever get that far on the restoration, but that's probably a few decades off. Maybe. Stu, if you Google Bailey Bridges, there's a large list of bridges. This is from Norman, who said that 35,000 quid plus VAT to do it. The costs are quoted. Obviously, the cost of erection would need to be considered, but UK firms are experienced. It wouldn't be all that expensive. Thank you, Norman. I'm just hoping that somebody at DOI has heard this, and we'll have a look at that as an option. Disappointing to hear Phil Gorn going on about there now being a consultation on what sort of bridge goes in its place. If you need the bridge for daily use, then you'd be dismayed to hear that a government consultation is to get underway. How many weeks and months is that going to add to the process? Just get the thing built. It's a bridge for a practical purpose, urgently needed by some. It's not necessary that it should be a contender for an architecture award or cost an excessive amount in times of financial austerity, unless they desperately need projects to keep the building sector in employment. 99% of people will only see the tarmac that they drive over. You don't look at the mantelpiece when you're poking the fire, says Dave. I'm not sure that's appropriate. Bob called. John Dog is perfectly right. An RSJ across the reinforced girders would work. It'd take a month at most at a fraction of the price. But government seems hell-bent on spending as much money as it can. It's crazy. Look at the Sulby Claddock. It's a girder bridge and it's been there for years. Just get it done. It can be built cheap and easy and it'll save hundreds of thousands of pounds on what they're talking about. Thank you. John Dodd, the voice of reason, whereas I can spend money in an empty room. Regards from Chris22. Couldn't possibly comment. Let's go to the lines. We've got John on to talk about bridges. Hello, John.
You know, it's funny. The first thing I thought of when that bridge came down was a Bailey Bridge. And, I mean, I've just checked up online on eBay. And, yeah, there's a ex-Army Bailey Bridge available in Keighley, West Yorkshire. 34 grand plus VAT ex works.
Yeah.
New timber deck, etc., etc. We've got the engineers, the Royal Engineers out here, you know, the company. What a great exercise for them to put this up, right? And then the government can spend as long as they want deciding how they're going to rebuild it. When they finally rebuild it, they can store the Bailey Bridge. Next time the bridge falls down, painless, isn't it?
It sounds like a plan, that, actually. It sounds so simple that it couldn't work, John.
Well, it's so simple they won't do it because we can't possibly do it for £34,000 plus that. You know, been quoted $1 million. It's got to be something. Someone's trying to fiddle us there. You know.
Well, yeah. Let's wait and see what is decided. But good points, thank you. John Dog for Chief Minister, the voice of reason, says Kevin. And what else? The bridge is not urgently required. There's another way around, says John. Right then.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should there be a limit on the number of complex questions fired at government departments? The President of Tynwald made a ruling regarding Tynwald questions at the beginning of this week's sitting. Claire Christian said that she was speaking in the light of representations about strains being placed on civil servants by unreasonable use of the question system and following discussions with the Speaker of the House of Keys. She told the court that the use of the question system is an integral part of the duties of members who have a right to access information via the system. But she said asking too many questions in too much detail can remove public servants from their main occupation and impose unsustainable strains on public services. But the Positive Action Group says it's worried about a chilling effect on parliamentary questions after the statement. Roger Tomlinson of the group told Jason Roberts parliamentary questions are a vital part of democracy. Should members be free to ask as many questions as they see fit, regardless of their complexity? Or should politicians be more mindful of the impact that detailed questions, particularly for both written and oral answer, could have on departmental resources? Is there a compromise that could be reached over the issue? Stu, some politicians are complaining about the cost and time involved in preparing answers. As the civil servants are at work and being paid, I can't see what they're complaining about. It will not be done on overtime, so where's the strain on resources? Some ministers don't want to be questioned if they have to answer in public. Keep asking questions that the public want answering, says Norman. Yeah, OK. I think the strain on resources is that the civil servants, the public sector workers, are there to actually do jobs and not collate answers to complex questions. I think that's the point that the President and the Speaker of the House of Keys have been trying to make about this. You know, if you've got somebody there who is employed to fix the roads or whatever, we would rather that they were sorting out fixing the roads than answering questions that might take them out of doing the real job for a couple of days while they come up with the answers. I think that's the strain on resources. Not that we've not got the people to do it, but while they're answering questions, they're not doing what they're actually paid to do. How dare the unelected president allow this get-out clause so that government won't be held to account? Says one contributor. They should be allowed to ask as many questions as they like, especially awkward ones. The devil's in the details, says John. Well, yes. Maybe what they ought to do is that they ought to vote on the questions, and if they decide that any of them are particularly frivolous or vexatious, they ought to be able to take a vote on it. Mind you, people would then say, well, of course, Comyn's got the block vote, so they'd stop the usual suspects asking questions at all. Public sector workers should answer every single question asked. They can't expect to be able to make decisions and then not be questioned on it. That's the problem. They believe that they're all powerful and untouchable. I voted for my MHK to represent me. If they were not asking so many questions with all the skullduggery that's going on in this island at the moment, then I would want to know why not. Yeah, I think it's just the level of detail that they've got to go into, and when things are on the record, they've got to be absolutely precise about them. I mean, you know, if you were to say to me, how many texts do you get on your programme every day? And I'd say, well, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, something like that. Now, if that was a question being asked in Tynwald, I would have to know exactly. And, you know, probably Catherine, because she's good at that kind of thing. I'd have to go through 6 months' worth of programmes and data and stuff and count exactly how many texts and how many emails and how many calls we'd taken over that 6 month period so that we could come up with the proper data rather than saying, well, it's about 20, 30, 40 a day or whatever it might be. So I think that's the difficulty with it. And I can see that, you know, when you've got to be that precise, it does take time to sort out. Let's go to the lines. We've got our friend Jill on. Hello, Jill.
Yes, they should be able to ask questions because we need to know.
Yes.
But some of them seem to have taken a degree in how many ways can they ask the same question.
They would say that's because they're not getting the answers. So they've got to reframe it.
You know,
yeah.
But, I mean, I think most of us can tell when the answer hasn't been given or not fully.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, when you sort of sit, I listen to it most weeks, and I do get a little frustrated at times.
The government isn't answering the questions, or the questions being asked?
Both.
Right.
You know, it happens both ways.
Yeah. Do you think that there's an amount of sort of vexatious questions that people are asking, or do you think that they're all pretty valid?
Well, they might start off valid, but then, it does sort of go all around the houses.
Yes. And are some questions used as a way to, as almost a blind? So you ask a question, and that's not really what you want the answer to, but it gives you the option then to go to a supplementary.
Yeah, definitely.
I suppose that's just the system and knowing how to work the system, isn't it?
Yes, but it does get annoying. And something I said to Catherine I find annoying is when it's obviously a majority vote.
Right.
But they call for a division.
Yes. Well, again, I think it's a case of getting things on record, isn't it? I think that's the whole idea of that.
If the majority's voted for it, is it that important?
I don't know.
When it is a majority, you never hear sort of those who vote against, you never hear them say no, not unless there's a big group of them.
Right.
And it's going to be a close call.
Yeah, it is all a bit combative at times, isn't it?
Yes.
It's all a bit sort of debating society at school. Yes. Okay.
I usually call it the comedy hour.
The comedy hour. All right, Jill, thank you very much for your call. It's always nice to talk to Jill. Hi, Stu. You're right. The civil servants have enough to do without answering stupid questions from the likes of Karen, although he wouldn't know because he's never had a proper job, John. Oh, from John. Right, okay. A lot of people would say that Peter Karen is one of the lone voices that's asking the questions that an awful lot of people want the answers to. Just for balance, who gave this unelected person the mandate to decide what questions can be asked by our elected representatives? Well, this person was handed this $60,000 a year job by pure cronyism. Democracy is dead, says Steve. Do you think? Stop dreaming up excuses for your pa. What? Excuses for what? I don't understand. Somebody's obviously having a pop, but I've got no idea what they're actually trying to say. Mike called, have they got the power to sort of unilaterally impose these restrictions? Given there's reference to standing orders, I wonder why members agree to them in the first place. Mr. Speaker said last week that he thought long and hard about it, which implies it's more than just standing orders. Maybe they could clarify what standing orders actually cover in relation to answering questions and what in this they don't. I presume that standing orders are available to look at online. I don't know for sure. Stu, there's none as deaf as those who don't want to hear and blind as those who don't wish to see. No one is trying to stop questions being asked. If MHK's made their questions more concisely and to the point, problem solved, says Dave. OK. I'm a civil servant and work overtime and weekends in a vain attempt to do the job I love properly without any pay or chance to take the time back. If I had any spare time, I'd choose a bigger caseload, not more paperwork and forms. If ministers took the time to understand the work of frontline staff, then maybe their question would be more pertinent. The majority of civil servants work for low pay and work over what they paid for. Very good point, and quite happy to read that one out. So thank you very much indeed for getting in touch. Afternoon, Stu. Now, let's face it, if a civil servant or an MHK you're asking a question and they're not giving you the answer that you're looking for, then they're very probably up to no good. Fact! That's Gary and good old Ramsey, to a point. That civil servant who complained about working overtime will get paid time off, same as my brother does. Well, yeah, but I think that sometimes, people sort of lump everybody in together and say, oh, civil servants, they've got it easy, sitting behind their nice, comfortable desks and they do nothing all day. And I thought it was a very valid point, actually, from that civil servant. And I think that there are a lot of people who put in far more hours than they're paid for because they want to do a good job and they're very diligent with it as well. So, let's not look a gift horse in the mouth there. Questions in Tynwald or Keys are under the control of the President or Speaker. I support the right of all members to ask whatever questions they believe need to have answers to in the public arena. However, I don't support mini-debates resulting from such questions. The President or Speaker should allow a member a maximum of 2 supplementaries, the first following the answer and the final after other members have had a chance to chip in. Allowing several supplementaries from one member results in a debate, which is not what the process is for. If a debate is required, then a declaratory resolution should be tabled. That from Stuart. Some good points there, Stuart, yeah. Some very good points that you're right, that sometimes I've quite often heard the Speaker or the President saying, that this isn't a debate. And is there a question in what the honourable members just said? So, yeah, I think you're quite right about that. Comment from Phil about questions. He says, following on from Jill's views, which I'm inclined to agree with, especially with asking the same question in many different ways. I've had the feeling for a very long time that the answers are already known to the questioner, who really wants to bring the subject into the public limelight. Yes, I think that there's an amount of that, and I think that that's maybe a good thing. Maybe that's a good use of questions. They say that if you're, as an interviewer, you should always know what the answers are going to be before you ask the question, kind of thing, so that you've got your next follow-up question ready. And I think that there's a lot of that as far as politics is concerned, that the question probably does know the answer, but it's not something that is in the public domain. So I think that's the purpose of asking the questions. Answering the question is reasonably easy, says Phil, as the answer is being written for them. It's the supplementary questions that cause the ministers their problems. Some seem to be able to answer supplementaries with ease while others struggle. Not that I listen to the rabble in the House of Commons on a Wednesday lunchtime. It's a clash with talking heads, bless you, Phil. But isn't Prime Minister's question time just 30 minutes? MHKs get an hour and Tynwald as long as it takes, as far as I know, says Phil. I think that I saw a documentary programme about the House of Commons a while ago, and I'm sure that they've got some sort of a system whereby it's almost like a lottery whether or not you get to ask a question in Prime Minister's questions. Now, whether or not that would work as far as we're concerned or not, I don't know. But is that maybe part of the answer, to limit the number of questions that somebody can ask? Or to have some sort of a ballot system whereby, one month they ask even-numbered questions, the other month they ask odd-numbered questions. I don't know.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays. Or you can share your thoughts any time on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll find an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing, get in touch and let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.